So you went and got yourself a law degree. Congratulations, and welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu, and I created this show to teach lawyers how to work in their gift and live their passions. Together with my guest, we provide the knowledge, insight, skills, inspiration, and encouragement you need to find your happy. Today, I'm sharing a conversation I had with a fellow lawyer and finance nerd, Elizabeth Stapleton. I met Liz online through the personal finance community, and we recently got to meet in person at FinCon 2016 in San Diego. She runs a personal finance blog over at Friday Night Shenanigans, where she shares her journey to financial freedom. And on today's show, she's going to share her thoughts on personal finance, how she manages her student loans, and why she's not letting her debt slow her down. So let's get to the show. Welcome, Liz. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm pumped.
Great. So the way I like to start the show is I usually ask my guests if you could just give us a brief description of how you got to be where you are and what you're doing today.
Sure. I will do my best to keep it brief. So I graduated law school in 2011, which I think most people that listen would probably know that was not the greatest time to finish law school. And ultimately, I didn't end up working at a firm. I worked for a legal research litigation solutions company, which I still do. And it was great because it allowed me to learn a lot of skills and apply my law degree. But ultimately, it wasn't what I wanted to do long term. So I started a blog in 2014 called Friday Night Shenanigans. And a lot of it was just dealing with the massive amount of student loan debt from law school. When you're not practicing, it's a different approach in the way you think about it. And so I've been blogging for a couple of years now, and it's opened up just a ton of other opportunities and avenues and ways for me to earn money and just sort of live my life. And so I'm working towards self-employment at this point. I'm not quite there yet.
That's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit more about how you got to become a financial blogger and what your experience was before you started blogging in finance and kind of your financial knowledge before you went online.
Sure. Yeah. So I realized in 2014, early 2014, basically what happened is I'd had a roommate and I was going to have another roommate, but I was going to have 2 months without one. So I had to pay all the rent. And looking at it, my finances, I was like, okay, I can totally do this. But it made me realize if I could actually do that, why wasn't I applying that amount of money, like that second half of the rent, to my credit card debt? I still had credit card debt. I'd been working full time for over a year at that point, and I was like, why am I not making any progress? And so I started diving into the world of personal finance blogs, and I launched mine in August 2014. And I just started blogging. I had no clue what I was doing, but sort of learning from personal finance blogs, I sort of applied what I learned. I paid off all my credit card debt in 5 months. It was about $6 or $7,000 at that point, and it just opened up a whole new world. So I just started learning more and more. And at this point, I feel like I've learned what I can, and it's a just keep going with good habits, because when you have as much debt, sort of student loans and whatnot, it's not going to go away overnight. So that's kind of how I got into it. And it's just blogging is addicting and it's fun and the community is amazing. And so that's sort of how I ended up where I am today and at FinCon and meeting you. And so it's been a great opportunity.
Yes. So the listeners are well aware of what a finance nerd I am because it comes up a lot. But what personal finance blogs did you start with?
Oh my gosh, Budgets Are Sexy was one. J Money is awesome. Yep. Anyone that reads his blog knows it. And then that leads you to Rockstar Finance, which introduces you to so many other personal finance blogs. And then I think Frugaling was another one early on. And then not long after that, I started doing podcasts, which was like Listen Money Matters, Smart Passive Income. And so it just spirals. And then you just find all these other ones and there's not enough time to just read through all of them. I wish I had more time to do that.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I loved blogs back before I had kids and I was like at the office a lot late at night. Blogs were like a great thing for me to read while I was like waiting for like documents to come in or something to get, turned or whatever. And now that my eyes are so burnt after practicing for 5 years, I've definitely turned to podcasts.
Yeah.
I unfortunately don't read as many blogs as I would like to anymore, but I love personal finance blogs. And I think there's such a good resource for people who are going through the journey of paying off student loans to see other people and how they're doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And as someone who loves to read but doesn't always have time, I've started branching out into trying to do other content, knowing that this is how I wanted, video content and audio content. just knowing that's what I have time for now to like listen to myself because I drive a lot. So I'm like, I don't get to read a lot, but I can listen. So I've started doing that for my blog as well.
Oh, I know. I even like listen to my books now. I'm addicted to Audible.
Yes, I had to cut myself off because I was just spending too much money.
It's crazy. I think next year I'm just going to buy the year subscription thing.
There you
because
go.
I fall for it every time. Like a new book comes out and I just buy it, and I'm like spending so much money. They're so much more expensive than paper books.
I know. Yeah. So I stopped and I've gone back to podcasts. I've discovered a lot more podcasts at FinCon that I wanted to start listening to. So
that's fantastic. So can we talk a little bit about your refinancing of the SoFi loan? How did you pick SoFi and how was that process?
Sure. So I was aware of SoFi from FinCon and other people that had refinanced with them. I'd looked at a lot of other companies, but it was just so easy. SoFi lets you do it just all online. If they need additional paperwork, you can just like take a picture of, I think I had to send them a picture of my passport, for additional ID or whatever. And it was all done so fast. I'd say maybe max a couple of days and it was more a waiting period because I needed to send them the additional info. And so, my previous loan had been a variable interest rate. And the interest rate kept going up. So that's when I looked to refinance and I went with SoFi to get that fixed interest rate. It worked out really well. It was really easy. They were easy to work with. And, I got to do it quickly. So that's how I went with SoFi.
Huge fan of SoFi. I've actually refinanced with them twice at this point, just because my income has increased. So I was able to get a better rate. And I'm actually a variable now. I was on a fixed. Mm-hmm. And now that I'm kind of in the last leg of my repayment, I'm pushing myself to do it quickly with the variable.
Or it goes up. Yeah. See, I was just like, I don't want to deal with variable anymore. And then all my federal loans are fixed interest rate pretty much. So, and I didn't consolidate them though, because I do want to be able to tackle them one at a time once I get done with my private loan. Yeah. So that I can get rid of them that way.
I think that totally makes sense. I think there's a lot of reasons to and to not consolidate. I actually have my loans separated also, because originally I had, a number of them, and now I just have two separate ones left. But nice. One's refinanced with SoFi and the other one with Common Bond. And the only reason I did it that way is because I could make them compete on rate against each other when I was first refinancing.
Nice.
So they were both fairly new companies. And so they were both wanting business. And so I gave them both business and ended up with rates that are almost similar, but also get the benefits of both platforms.
Yeah.
Because they do also offer all this other stuff, such as like career planning and like meetups and networking.
Oh, yeah. I totally meant to go to a meetup and I forgot. Or I didn't like register for it. I didn't have time. I was out of town.
Yeah. I mean, their communities are actually really great. And it's like really young, smart people, because it's all these people who are refinancing student loans from like graduate schools. Mm-hmm. So I feel like if you are interested in refinancing, those extra benefits are also worth considering when you're thinking about different programs.
Did you refinance federal loans or did you just have private loans that you
I only had federal. Yeah. Financed federal. And it was I should have done it earlier, but I was really nervous about losing the benefits of the federal.
Yeah. And if you financially could make those like the standard payment, then absolutely that makes sense.
So I started in Big Law and could make the payment and probably could have refinanced earlier, but was like every week, like, I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get fired.
Yeah, it's not a strong market a few years ago, and it still can be a little bit sketchy.
It is, and it's really scary when you don't know what to expect coming out of law school, just because you hear how hard life in Big Law can be. Mm-hmm. And so for me to refinance and lose all the benefits of the federal program, and then a year in end up leaving Big Law, I would have been screwed.
Yeah.
But also there's the whole consideration, which I already mentioned, of your income. And so my loans were so high that my income, even coming into Big Law, was way less than my loans.
Yeah.
So the rate I got wouldn't have been that great. And so kind of waiting also benefited me in some ways.
Sure.
There's a lot of things to consider. I'm actually going to have SoFi on the podcast in a couple weeks to talk about their programs and things and what they offer. So
nice. No, they're awesome. They're fun to work with. They have a great referral program too.
That's also true. Yes, they are also a affiliate of this show. So
nice. I like it.
I'll plug them as much as
glad
I can. But I love them, and I have no problem plugging things that I love because I think that law school students aren't necessarily knowledgeable on these things.
Right.
I went to a lunch recently that was being held by the local bar association about student loans, and they had somebody from SoFi there. And the table I was sitting at, a couple of people were like, oh, is this a scam? Is this one of those debt consolidation companies that like charges you all these big fees? And I was like shocked because I love them. And I think that the work they do is so innovative and new and young, and nothing about them is like traditional debt consolidation, like company.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, their loans are so big from law school that they don't even want to look at them. And so they don't even realize that, because I do have tons of friends that are on like the income-based repayment. And they're like, yeah, whatever, it'll be forgiven in 25 years. Except they don't realize like the way things stand now, that forgiven amount is a taxable income. And if it's just grown for 25 years, you don't want to be taxed as if you made almost $1 million, like,
yeah.
I mean, and that could change. Obviously, there's still time. None of these programs are old enough to know what that's going to look like. And again, whoever ends up being in office, after this next election, both Congress and the White House, it's going to be a difference in what might happen there too. So there's still time, but I'm like, I feel like you should maybe know that might happen. So that's my biggest thing, where I'm like, I want to just like shake my friends and wake them up. But you can't approach people like that. They need to be open and wanting to talk about it first.
Can we talk a little bit about the income-based repayment and how you got into it? And if somebody was interested, like what should they do to see if it's a good option for them?
Sure. So federal loans, and they have like a webpage on repayment options, and there's quite a few. So there's income-based repayment, there's income contingent repayment, and income-based repayment is basically, it looks at how much you make, and you're not going to have to make payments that are more than either, I can't remember if it's 10% or 15% of your gross income. And what's considered your gross income, there's a definition, all that stuff. So, rather than, when you don't make enough to make that standard 10-year repayment, income-based repayment, depending on when you borrowed, will be either 20 or 25-year repayment term where you make that income-based repayment. And the way it does it now is you make those payments for 20, 25 years. At the end of that term, the rest is forgiven, quote unquote forgiven, because it is considered taxable income right now. There are other repayment plans. There's graduated repayment where you start with a smaller payment and then what you're required to pay grows. People might be a little hesitant to do that if they're not sure that their income's going to grow. So there's a bunch of different flexible repayment plans. What's going to work for you depends. And it's also different loans qualify for different programs. So, like the Perkins loan didn't qualify for my income-based repayment or something. I paid that one off. It was a small one, but certain loans qualify for certain things. And it's on their website. I also have like a table somewhere on my website that has like just the checkbox of if it's this loan, it qualifies for this, because it does vary by what type of government loan you have.
Great. I will leave a link to that on the show notes so people can find that. I think that would be really helpful for people who have multiple loans or are trying to figure out what their options are.
Yeah. Yeah, what you can do, because it does vary. And you can do that on the application. So with those income-based repayment plans, typically you have to recertify each year, which is usually like just submitting, hey, here's my tax information from last year. Either it's significantly changed, in which case you have to send in like paychecks or whatever, or it hasn't, just use that information to calculate my payment. So when you recertify, you can like check a box that says, get me the best payment plan that will work for all my loans. So you can kind of have them do some of the work too when you recertify.
Great. So go back in time a little. What do you wish you had known about student loans before you went to law school, before you took out the loans? Did you make any mistakes things you would have done differently?
So many. In hindsight, I mean, law school, I did learn a lot. I go back and forth on like, would I have gone to law school? And, if I still would have, I think I still would have at this point and where I'm at. But I didn't have any idea. Like when I went to law school, I graduated college 2008, which was a terrible time to graduate college. But law school is still a good idea. And I just kept hearing, well, everyone takes out the loans and it's fine. And I'd always been kind of skeptical and like aware of my money before that. So I'm not quite sure why when I went to law school, I just kind of was like, okay, I'll go with the crowd and do this and whatever. Oh well, these loans.
Too. Literally, me too. Before
that,
I was so money-minded, and for some reason I just signed on the dotted line.
Yeah, I think law school is just so overwhelming that other things go out the door. Like, because I was so money conscious in picking a college, and then like apparently law school is like, okay. And I did have like a partial scholarship going into it. So that was part of my choice, but it's still like, it was a lot of loans. I didn't evaluate, because I took out loans for living expenses and I didn't evaluate or have any clue how to budget that. So if I had actually had an idea of how to budget, I would have probably taken out a little bit less been better about how I budgeted and spent that money to cover my rent and things like that. So I wouldn't have ended up with as many loans at the end. And I also wouldn't have been as stressed about money throughout law school too, because I just had no clue how to budget. So those, I think, taking a second to assess, hey, are these loans going to be right for me? Not ignore what everyone else is doing. Think about what you want to do to see if that's going to be right. Know how much you're taking out and for what, because it's not just tuition, because you do take out, oftentimes, if you're a full-time law student, you're going to, unless you've saved up a ton of money to cover living expenses, you probably are going to take out some for living expenses. If you live at home, maybe not so much, but chances are that's not unusual. But can you keep that to a minimum, And then when you are taking out money for those things, making sure you're spending it wisely and budgeting it so that you're not running out, 2/3 of the way through the semester or whatever the case may be.
Yep. I think so many people, hopefully people are learning that now, but I think so many people didn't know that, especially back when we were in the heyday, because we went to law school at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think back when jobs were plentiful and it seemed like the sky was the limit. The thing that scares me with the pay raises, I feel like people are getting back into that mentality.
Yes.
So we'll see how that plays out. For recent law school graduates who are now finding themselves saddled with 6 figures of debt and unsure about how to go on living because they're so stressed out about them, what do you think are the first steps? What do you think you should do to kind of get a handle on things and be able to breathe a little bit more easily?
Look at the numbers. It's going to hurt, but it's probably not going to be quite as bad as you thought. Once you know, okay, this is how much I owe, this is what the interest rate is, and you have a payment plan in place, so much stress goes out the window when you know what's happening. If you're just I don't want to think about it, that's almost more stressful because you are thinking about it. Write it all down, have a place where you create sort of a binder or a spreadsheet that has all the information you need to know about your loans, sort of the base, how much you owe, what the interest rate is, your sign-in information to make those payments, what your payment plan's going to be. Just get started with having a plan. Then once the plan's in place, you can tweak and you can adjust and you can say, well, I would like to actually pay a little extra, so I'm going to budget or I'm going to save or I'm going to side hustle. But the first step is just having that down, some kind of plan, even if it's not the plan you end up with 3 months later. Having something there will take a big, load off your shoulders.
So can we talk just a little bit about how you know when a law firm has a good culture? What should people be looking for?
I think definitely if there's a firm you're thinking of working out, reach out to an associate there and see if they're happy, see sort of how they feel about it. Because if someone's totally pumped, they love going to work every day, chances are that firm's got a really good culture. If you're a little nervous and you don't want to be that stalkerish on LinkedIn, then you can, when you walk in, I think a sign of a good firm, and you can kind of tell this from the interview, if you do interview, is, do associates feel like their thoughts and opinions are heard, whether or not they get everything they want, whether it's a tool or something, knowing that their thoughts and opinions are valued and heard, but also that they're not micromanaged. I think people that are micromanaged really tend to resent that a little bit because they're I went to law school, I have a brain, I kind of have a clue as to what I'm doing. If you feel open that you're able to ask questions when you do have them, that people are willing to take the time to help you learn. Because when you're a new lawyer, there's a lot you don't know, but at the same time, you don't want to be micromanaged in every little thing you do. Or even as a senior associate, you're okay, I've been at this a few years, I know how to answer an email or whatever the case may be. I think those are signs where it's just open communication, people feel like they're heard, and that they can also reach out with questions and ask without being made to look dumb or made to look like they need tons of extra, hand holding. So I think that tends to be good culture. Also, they tend to order lunch in every once in a while. I think the respect, no matter where you're at in the firm, because you definitely see the firms where paralegals are kind of belittled, not necessarily belittled, but treated okay, well, you only know so much. And maybe that's true, but what they do know is extremely helpful. Trying to get through all your work without a paralegal helping you out with stuff is very frustrating and takes a long time. So just everyone being valued for their role in the firm. And when you look around, the receptionist is a good, indicator too. How is it that they're talking to the attorney when they call to say you're there or whatever the case may be? So just kind of take cues if you're in the firm and take a look around and see sort of just people's attitudes. No matter how poker face a lawyer is, how they feel about their workplace is going to show somehow.
I love that receptionist tip. I've never heard that before, but I think it's so crucial because there's always these little like clues as to how the culture works. And I love that. One of the tips I always give people is when you're walking around the firm, see how attorneys are interacting with each other. And if they know each other's names, if they look each other in the eye, if they seem familiar.
Body language, how are they standing?
Yeah, like the things that people can't control and aren't necessarily thinking that you're critiquing them on. I think that's great advice. And along the same line as contacting somebody who works there, I always tell people to contact someone who left.
That's another good point. Yeah.
Because
LinkedIn's amazing for that.
Yeah, it really is.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is a great place to be, and I didn't leverage all of its benefits when I was deciding on firms, and I wish I'd used it better and kind of had more tips on how to use it. So just made me think, another tool is Glassdoor, because there will be reviews on Glassdoor with people that have worked there or have left. Glassdoor is another good one to get some. It also will give you some intel on salaries to see if you can figure out, kind of help leverage a better negotiation strategy. Interesting. I'm actually having a lawyer on, talk specifically about negotiation and salary in a couple of weeks. So that will be
very excited to listen to your podcast when it launches and to listen to all the episodes.
So I'm really excited to see what she has to say, just because I feel like lawyers we negotiate for a living, but for some reason we're not great at negotiating on our own behalf or like don't really know how to.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into all that good stuff. But I wanted to ask you just two more questions before we go. One, What's the best tool, tip, advice, kind of thing you've personally used to help you on your journey so far?
Oh, wow.
If you had one book, one podcast, what would really change your mindset or your trajectory in a significant way?
It's going to sound cliche, but I loved reading Girl Boss and 4-Hour Workweek.
Oh, yes.
But I will say, as far as a tool for student loans, Student Loan Hero has a dashboard that'll kind of estimate what your potential tax liability would be. So I would recommend that one too.
All three of those, I agree wholeheartedly. Girl Boss, I read literally in one sitting.
Yeah, I think I did too. I think I broke it out into two. I made lunch in between or something.
I through that. 4-Hour Workweek, I think, is one that is very polarizing.
Yeah, that's true. I need to reread it. And some stuff I totally wholeheartedly agree with. And some stuff I'm like, nope.
Yeah, agreed. And I loved it the first time I read it. My husband hated it. And so it was very interesting for us to kind of talk back and forth about it. And I kind of came down a little and he came up a little. But
I think it very much depends on your mindset and what you want to move towards, for sure.
Agreed. But I will put links to that stuff as well in the show notes so people can go take a look at those things. I want to get people reading more books about kind of all this fun stuff that expands your mind and your thinking. And I like to round out the podcast by asking, what's the best advice that you have for a young lawyer who's trying to craft a more fulfilling life going forward?
Focus on you. Don't look to what everyone else is doing. That person may look really happy doing what they're doing, and maybe they are, but just because they enjoy it doesn't mean you will. So focus on you. Think back to things you enjoyed maybe before you got swept up in law school, because law school can be so all-consuming, and so can being a lawyer. So sometimes you just have to think back and then try new things again. So just have an open mind and focus on what's going to make you happy. Don't just try to do something because someone else is happy doing it.
Amen. I love that. Thank you so much. That's great advice. And thank you so much for coming on today and sharing everything about your story and getting people a little bit more knowledge about finances. What's the best way for people to connect with you after the show?
They can go to either of my sites. I have Friday Night Shenanigans. That's my personal finance site. It's just FridayNightShenanigans.com. And all my Twitter and Pinterest and all that stuff is there. Or just ElizabethStapleton.com is my freelance site if they want to learn more about freelancing or blogging, that sort of thing.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. Please head over to my website, www.thehappylawyerproject.com, for more information from today's show. While you're there, I'd love it if you leave me your thoughts on the show. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or follow me on Instagram. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to head over to iTunes to subscribe and review the show. As you know, each rating helps more listeners find the show and helps me get awesome guests on here for you guys. If there's anyone you'd like me to have on the show, or if you'd like to be on the show, head over to my website and let me know, or send me an email at akoma, OKEOMA, @thehappylawyerproject.com. A special thanks to everyone who's left a review, sent me an email, or reached out to me in any way. I appreciate you. Thank you again for spending this time with me, and if you would like to learn more about working in your gift and living your passion, head over to the website for a free gift. Until next time, bye!